How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons. And Mets fans, it is time to get excited. The New York Metropolitans just managed to pry away from the Houston Astros, one of the best minds in all the game today when viewing amateur scouting, and that is their director of amateur scouting, and Kris Gross now heads to Queens to pair along once again with David Stearns, this time as Mets VP of amateur scouting. So the question lies, who is Kris Gross? What has he done during his time in Houston? And why should us fans not only be ecstatic about this hire, but knowing that this could easily be one of the biggest moves the Mets make all offseason long? Plenty to get into, so let's do exactly that. But before we go further, I have to let you all know about today's video sponsor and our great friends, that being Game Time app. Because as many of you know, I love my sports, hence the whole YouTube thing. I also love attending concerts, comedy shows, among many other various forms of entertainment each year. So in order to do that, I got to get my tickets, right? And that's where Game Time app comes into play, because if, in case you're unaware, they have been taking the ticketing space by storm the past couple years, and they are your go-to, especially for last-minute tickets. If you're like me, you hate, and I mean absolutely hate it, when you need last-minute tickets and you cannot get them, let alone you get them, but there's all these ridiculous extra charges and fees that you weren't expecting. Game Time app has you covered with the best deals imaginable every single week for all your various entertainment that you want to seek out, and they're not going to beat around the bush. They're going to give you those flat rates right up front, so you're not charging anything additional that you weren't initially expecting. So you want to check your seats as well from the seat itself. So in the app, you go through it and you want to say, hey, where am I sitting exactly while attending this baseball game or attending this concert? You can do exactly that in the Game Time app. If you want an app that's going to protect you from any type of cancellation, whether it's from a concert, comedy show, sports game, whatever it may be, Game Time app again has you covered. So for all these reasons and then some, why are you still waiting? Make sure you click the link if you haven't already in the description to download the Game Time app today for all your ticketing needs, and use my promo code WARDY, that is WARDY, for 20% off your first purchase. Again, that is promo code WARDY for WARDY off your $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to Game Time app again for sponsoring today's video. Alrighty, folks, you know the drill. I want to see your instant reactions and comments down below. But for me, I'm beyond ecstatic, just like any other Mets fan who has any knowledge of who exactly this is. Now, Kris Gross, again, is coming over from the Houston Astros organization. So how did the Mets pull this off? Well, you'd have to imagine that David Stearns and his say certainly played a part here based on the relationship he already had there in Houston. Now, those that don't know, David Stearns used to be the assistant GM for the Astros right around a decade ago. And during that tenure, even though it wasn't too long of a time, Kris Gross was also in the organization for a bit. So to what relationship they have, I don't know to an exact degree, but we do know that that probably played a little bit of a helping hand in the Mets' favor here, and not only interviewing him, but ultimately landing him. You know, from everyone that I've heard across the Astros organization, I even went out of my way and spoke to some people that are involved in the Astros, you know, people that are not only diehard fans, but of course have their own respective connects in the organization. And after texting them, the first thing they said to me was, Tyler, this is not only a phenomenal hire for the Mets, but it's an even bigger blow for the Houston Astros. So if that isn't telling, I don't know what is. And to give you an example of just how big of a deal this is for the New York Mets, let's just take one. Obviously, being in amateur scouting means that you have a heavy say in who you draft every year, right? Well, over the past decade, when looking across all teams in Major League Baseball, the Houston Astros are ranked first in the amount of players out of around 329 that they have drafted, allowing 77 of said players to hit the MLB. They are first in baseball in that regard. So throughout that time, throughout at least half that decade, or at least past number of years, a big part of that was because of, yes, Kris Gross. And who's at the bottom of that list all the way at the end is the New York Metropolitans, who have had just around a measly 33 players out of their 300 draft picks actually hit the bigs over the past decade. So the Mets have had certainly a problem not only holding on to talent, but them hitting MLB caliber level in the organization if they are saying not trade away. Now you bring in Kris Gross, who brings an element unlike anything ever before. The fact that the Mets even managed to land this guy, got the interview, is beyond me. This caught all of us by surprise, and that is why I'm so pumped up to get into this, because this is exactly what you need to have sustained success. You need a mind in here that is not only phenomenal when it comes to drafting year after year, but is also drafting guys in the later rounds that they know have potential to have an impact in the MLB in a couple of years after being acquired, no less. Or if it's international scouting, Gross has had his fair share of involvement there. But now let's get into the accolades here, okay? So for those that don't know Kris Gross, he spent the past decade in the Astros organization. He was hired in 2012 initially as a West Coast supervisor, and then was promoted to their director role there in 2020. Since then, he has has had key impacts on not only the MLB draft, international scouting, professional scouting alike, and key names like Jeremy Pena, Corey Lee, Hunter Brown, Patrick Sandoval, Jake Myers, just to name a few, of which he has had certainly helping him in drafting. And yeah, Drew Gilbert, Ryan Clifford, who are now Mets top prospects that were acquired in the Justin Verlander trade. Yeah, he certainly had a big say in those decisions as well to acquire them. So I'm sure those prospects are happy to rekindle that relationship. I'm sure Stearns is happy to rekindle this relationship. And as a Mets fan, knowing that they just brought in someone that is going to have a massive impact on not only their drafting for the years going forward, but international scouting and to find talent that they can grow within the organization is absolutely vital. You are not going to get anywhere for this Metropolitan team, rather, if you do not make the proper decisions on the scouting front. To have someone to Chris Gross's ability that is deemed as one of the best, if not the best in all the game of baseball currently, I mean, how can you not be excited about that if you are a New York Mets fan? So that is really my biggest takeaway when looking at this. The Mets just landed a guy that is going to have a massive impact on them, hopefully for the next 5-10 plus years, to impact drafts, impact internationally. And from the players I listed, it just is phenomenal what Gross has been able to do throughout the past decade, and really in a small sample size since the start of the 2020 season, being involved more in the draft, being involved more in international scouting and professional scouting, even when it comes to, of course, type of deals that the Astros make when looking at player development, maybe making some low-key moves and really seeing that you can get the best out of them. You know, I don't know exactly how much of an impact, if at all, that Chris Gross had here, I'm sure to a degree, but a name that certainly pops in my mind is the likes of their big slugger that they have over there as is, because he was initially part of the Dodgers organization, and that was a trade that, of course, Dodgers would love to have back, as, of course, every team every single year trades away guys, prospects, that you don't really know what you have until after they're dealt. But to see what Jordan has done during his time in Houston is just one of many examples of international scouting coming into play for clubs, but two, also making sure you're buying into prospects early when trading. So in this case, the Astros had plenty of success, and now looking at the Mets here and what they're getting someone that is not only going to impact them greatly for the years going forward in the draft, but can also have a say in acquiring prospects from other organizations, and that, of course, can be key. If you want to have sustained success, you need to have a competent farm, and the Mets are starting to finally build that, and then some. So rest assured, this looks like just the start of a very exciting offseason for the New York Metropolitans, as they land, in my opinion, a slam dunk hire in Chris Gross. Now let's see what he brings to Queens and ultimately what he does at next year's MLB draft. So for all you fans that are very much into prospects and scouting, make sure you're glued in and keeping a close eye on Chris Gross and the inevitable moves that he will be making. So Mets fans, I want to know your reactions again in the comments below. How do you feel about Chris Gross coming in now as their VP of amateur scouting? If you're in favor of this, if you're somehow against this, however you're feeling, please make sure to let me know, and stay tuned for consistent Mets coverage all off season long. Every news, every report, every rumor, rest assured we're covering it here on WardyNYM, your #1 source for all Mets news, rumors, and then some all off season long. Thank you guys again so much. As always, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.